there will be misuse of this new rule by members of the SC, ST, OBC community who may, perhaps out of some bias, may want to accuse or target someone from the general category.
These are basically equity regulations, and they have been in place since 2012. What is new is it has broadened the definition of discrimination. Upon receiving a complaint, the committee has to meet within 24 hours. There are penalties for non-compliance as well.
Who has an objection to this rule change?
The most massive sort of outrage has come from the general category. If we see the POSH Act, for example, nobody would say that there should be a man on the committee. A lot of the discrimination against SC, ST students comes from OBCs. So why are they being brought into the ambit of the Act?
While this may attempt to stop discrimination against the backward caste, this may start discrimination against the forward caste or the general category students and teachers.
UGC has not responded. The ministry has not responded. There has been 118% increase in caste-based discrimination in campuses.
This rule change, has it been proposed or has it already come into effect? Hello and welcome. You're watching me, Sanket Upadhyay, on The Federal. The show is called AI with Sanket. AI not as you know it. This is the AI of news, because news in India today requires not artificial but analytical intelligence. We promise to our viewers that for the next 1 week, that is the next 6 to 7 days, we are going to run a campaign, a sort of a series of stories, of discussions, trying to explain what is this rule change by the University Grants Commission, the UGC, which has a lot of people up in arms. In fact, all those who are considered beneficiaries of this rule change are also upset. Those who feel that they will be victimized or othered are also upset. And this entire rule change has come for the benefit of the people. What is this rule? What is the equity rule? How does it change life as we know it on campus? And what is the problem related to it which is being highlighted? Is it politics? Is it much ado about nothing? Is it really about equality and equity? Or could this be about politics? We know that very crucial state assembly elections are around the corner, so it makes all the sense to talk about equity, particularly for the upliftment of the OBCs. The big question though, however, that is being raised is the UGC equity rule against members of the forward caste in order to show that the government cares for the backward classes? I have with me Ms. Aranya Shankar. She works for the Federal. Thank you very much. She's my colleague. Aranya, thank you for joining us on this program. The basic idea behind this inaugural program is going to be to understand what the UGC has done, who has what objection, who is saying what is its impact, what are teachers saying, what are students saying, what are the affected parties saying, what are the beneficiaries saying. So it's going to be a master class which we hope you will be able to take. I'm going to be the student, you will be the teacher. So my first question to you is, what is this new rule change?
Okay, so this is basically called the University Grants Commission Promotion of Equity in Higher Education Institutions Regulations 2026. So it's like you said, these are basically equity regulations, and they have been in place since 2012. But what has changed now, in a sense, we have to remember that this is not something sudden. This is a result of a decade-long campaign, basically by the mother of Rohit Vemula, who died by suicide in Hyderabad Central University, and accused the institution and his peers of caste discrimination, and then Payal Tadvi's mother, who also died by suicide in 2019 in Maharashtra. So it is it is a culmination of a court case that has been going on where they have been asking that universities, higher educational institutions need to better address the issue of discrimination. So in a sense, what the new rules say is that they want to eradicate discrimination of in and they've included all categories under this: caste, class, gender, economically weaker sections, religion, place of birth, etc. And it has broadened the definition. So what it has done, these regulations, what is new is it has broadened the definition of discrimination. So it's not just explicit acts, but any implicit act of bias or will be considered discrimination. Now, what has the UGC said? What has to be done to address caste discrimination? There are a couple of things. One, every higher educational institution needs to have an equal opportunity center, which will basically frame policies and make initiatives to make sure that there are no there are equal opportunities and there are no cases of caste discrimination. Within the under the equal opportunity center this time, the UGC has said there should be an equity committee. Now this is a 10-member committee which is headed by the chairperson will be the head of the institution, and it must have members of OBCs, SC, ST, PWD, women. All these should be one member each should be.
Aranya, just for my better understanding, it's a lot like the POSH committee for addressing cases of sexual harassment in workplaces, which are set up for the benefit of women.
Absolutely.
Something along those lines, this time around, to stop discrimination against people of all castes, color, religion, gender. So there will be this sort of committee, right?
Yeah. This committee has to have representation from this, but there are a total of 10 members and it is headed by the head of the institution. So we should be clear that the chairperson is still the head of the institution. And more importantly, there are two new initiatives: equity squads and equity ambassadors. So an equity squad is essentially like a mobile squad which will visit various places on campus, what they see as vulnerable areas, etc. And it will maintain vigilance, in so to say. And equity ambassadors are also to be appointed in each, say, hostel, department, etc. These are going to be nodal officers who are responsible.
And they will report into which authority?
This is all under the Equal Opportunity Center. So they will be reporting to the coordinator of the Equal Opportunity Center, right? And so now the first time these regulations, one thing is important is that it's not just that they're saying all these things will be done. There is a timeline given. What happens if a complaint of discrimination comes to the equity committee, right? There is a very sort of defined timeline of accountability. So within 24 hours of receiving a complaint, which could also be through by the way, an equity helpline, which is going to be a 24/7 number, where if you want, your identity will also be kept confidential. So once upon receiving a complaint, the committee has to meet within 24 hours. After that, they have 15 working days to submit a report to the head of the institution. And once the head of the institution receives that complaint, he or she has 7 days to initiate some kind of action on the basis of that complaint, if he or she sees fit. And if it's a criminal, there's a criminal angle to it, then even report it to the police. And what the UGC has done is, in case you do not do these things in a time-bound manner, there are penalties for non-compliance as well. So you can be debarred from UGC schemes, from giving out degrees. So in that case, it's a very strict kind of regulation.
So now we have a clear idea of what this equity rule is. The point is, any discrimination in a university or an educational institution governed by the University Grants Commission, correct me if my understanding is wrong, Aranya, governed by the University Grants Commission, this is an attempt to stop any form of discrimination. A committee or an equity squad will be formed, the head of which will be the head of this institute or university. and the squad is going to go to various places and they will act on complaints which are either named or unnamed. So suppose, say for instance, somebody complains of discrimination on the basis of religion, region, caste, uh, even gender, then whether this complaint is named or it is anonymous in nature, they will have to comply within 24 hours and submit their report. Failure to do so will lead to strict action by the University Grants Commission. Correct? This is
Yeah,
what it
only
is.
I wanted to make one distinction. The squads are different from the equity committee itself. The equity committee and the squad is a separate thing under the Equal Opportunity Center, and the main body which is responsible for handling complaints of discrimination is the equity committee.
And this equity committee will be a committee formed within the institute or the organization, educational
Yes,
organization.
but it does have, it can have external members. So in fact, let me read out who all will be part of the committee. It's a 10-member committee headed by the head of the institution will be the ex officio chairperson. There will be 3 professors or senior faculty members as members, 1 non-teaching staff member, 2 representatives from civil society, which who will not be part of the institution, 2 student representatives, and the coordinator of the Equal Opportunity Center will be the ex officio member secretary. So this is the composition of the entire committee, and I'd also like to read out what the regulations say. It says that the committee must have representation of other backward classes, persons with disabilities, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and women.
Correct. So there should be proper representation so that there is no bias in the handling of the grievances by this committee itself. So they want to maintain a equitable mix within this equity committee. I think that is the idea behind this. Fair enough. Now, so we have a clear idea of what the UGC has done. Now let's come to question number 2. Aranya, the question is, who has an objection to this rule change and why?
Okay, so that is, like you said, there are objections from both sides, but predominantly the objection seems to be from general category students who are saying that they are going to be discriminated against now. Why? There are a couple of reasons. They're saying when you say implicit acts of caste discrimination, that can include anything. Anybody can say that this happened to me, it was because of my caste, and they will not have to give any reason. That is one thing they're saying. The other thing that they are saying again and again is that this equity committee, while it mentions that there should be people from OBC, there should be OBC representation, SC, ST, women, PWD. It does not mention general category. So therefore, they are saying that that will adversely affect their, future, so to speak. So that is one major thing. But like I said, I just read out to you. I want to make this point here that I read out to you all the people who are going to be part of this committee, right? And so if we assume that there is one person each from OBC, SC, ST, women, and say PWD, that is still just 5 people, and this is a 10-member committee. So while it would not, like you said, if we see the Posh Act, for example, nobody would say that there should be a man on the committee. It makes absolutely no sense. So even in this committee, to say that a general category student or a person, a teacher, should be on the committee to deal with issues of discrimination is completely counterintuitive. So we have to understand that while it does not bar general people from being there, there is a reason why it says that these representations should be there, and there are still seats left on the committee where people from other categories can be included. But like I said, this is just one part of the, from the other side, there is a concern that there are a lot of the discrimination against SC, ST students comes from OBCs. So why are they being brought into the ambit of the act? There is also, some people have been raising objections that this kind of timeline of resolving complaints in 15 days, initiating action in 7 days, is probably not enough, and it will lead to a situation where things are just being done for the sake of it. So there are all these kind of grievances, but I would say that the most massive sort of outrage has come from the general category, which feels like their own political party has betrayed them, I would say, because this is the core vote of the BJP.
We are going to look at the objections to this rule change or rule changes. It's got very complicated names, HECI and VB. I forgot the letters. VB?
Yeah, SA.
VBSA. Now,
VBAS, Viksit Bharat Adhishtan something.
Okay, so there are two parts to this rule change. The first question that I want to ask, has the rule change come into effect, or is this a bill which will then be cleared in the Lok Sabha, then Rajya Sabha, then go for the president's assent, and then finally we'll reach where we have to?
Yeah, I also wanted to say that one of the main things that people are saying is that, there was a draft regulation in 2025 last year, which the UGC had brought out, which for the first time included a clause on false complaints. In the 2025 UGC draft regulations, there was a false complaints clause, which basically said that if somebody lodges a false complaints of discrimination, they would be fined, and if it was of a serious nature or there was subsequent such cases, even disciplinary action could be initiated against them. So now, at that time, both the mothers of Rohit Vemula, Payal Tadvi, and people at large had objected to those regulations. And so this time that clause has been removed, which is another reason why people are up in arms, and they're saying, what happens if people make false complaints? Now, as it is, you have expanded the ambit of discrimination, so there will be so many false complaints and there is no avenue. But again, I'd just like to say that the option of appeal still exists, which has been there since 2012. So people have 30 days to appeal to the ombudsman in case they feel that the verdict is not in their favor.
So Aranya, we are going to deal with two primary objections to the changes, but before that I want to ask you another simple question. This rule change, has it been proposed or has it already come into effect?
It has already come into effect. It came into effect the day it was notified. It says, the rules explicitly state that it will come into effect the moment they are notified.
So there will be this equity committee, equity squad, and all this will, now the mandate is out there. They will exist.
Yes.
On campus.
Yes, they should exist. Whether they will exist is something we'll have to see.
Fair enough. Now, for the benefit of our viewers, we are going to talk about the primary concern over here, especially by forward caste or the general category students, even teachers, largely student union bodies, who feel that while this may attempt to stop discrimination against the backward caste, this may start discrimination against the forward caste or the general category students and teachers, right? This is the main concern, and that is where the bulk of the agitation is going on. Has there been a response to this concern?
You mean, okay, so yeah, this concern, it's, it's coming from MPs also now. The Shiv Sena, Swati Chaturvedi Priyanka Chaturvedi has also made the same allegations. Now, response, that I do not think that there has been any institutional response. The UGC has not responded. The ministry has not responded. But there are Nishikant Dubey, who's the BJP MP, has responded saying that there is nothing of this sort. There will be no such discrimination. And even if there is something, it will be dealt with. But as of now, there has been no kind of institutional response to this agitation.
Now, here is the point. To say that any new rule change, Aranya, may be put to potential misuse is something which is applicable to any law in this country. Anything. You bring about a law for the protection of the vulnerable and there can be a tendency to misuse. The argument in favor of such rules existing, do they conclude that you cannot have a situation where you do not protect the backward classes, obviously because all of this came into existence because of Rohit Vemula's case and that long fight by Rohit Vemula's mother. So to not protect the vulnerable and the backward class cannot be the prayer when you are saying that don't get a rule change in effect, don't get a new rule.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, if the argument is that it will be misused, that's true for anything. But this is also, the UGC data itself speaks as to why such a, these kind of rules are necessary, these regulations are necessary. There was a recent report that from 2019 to 24, there has been 118% increase in, caste-based discrimination in campuses across the country. So clearly there is a need for mechanisms to deal with this, and that the current kind of mechanisms that exist are not being able to effectively deal with such cases.
Aranya, this rule change, and this is perhaps I should have asked this question earlier, does it only and only protect members of the backward class from members of the general category, or this is a rule which is basically anti-discrimination? So say for instance, if tomorrow someone from the general category were to say that I am being discriminated against, then they can also approach this equity squad.
So there is nothing mentioned in the regulations specifically on this for me to be able to answer that. These are obviously, like I said, it's like, consider it like a sexual harassment committee, an ICC so it is fundamentally made for women to go and complain against, because the incidents of the reverse happening has just so few that it does not make any sense to put them down on paper. So it would be difficult for me to say whether that could exist in such a, but it is made for these communities, largely speaking.
Now Aranya, let's assume that there is misuse. Let's assume because the fear is that there will be misuse of this new rule by members of the SC, ST, OBC community who may perhaps out of some bias or prejudice may want to accuse or target someone from the general category. At least that is the concern. Is there any grievance redressal mechanism in a situation like this?
Yes, absolutely. So that is what I was, earlier talking about, that even if a false complaint clause doesn't exist, it does not mean that there is no scope for an appeal. So in fact, I should tell you that in the 2012 UGC regulation, equity regulations, the time given to, for a person, if somebody appeals, to respond was 90 days. In in the current regulations, it says that a person, a person has the right to go to the ombudsperson within 30 days from the receipt of the report, and the ombudsperson has to make all efforts to dispose of the appeal within a period of 30 days. So in fact, the time given to address the appeal has also been shortened so that people are not left in limbo for a really long time. So it's not as though once you have a report and it's not in your favor, or you feel you've been unjustly discriminated against, there are no options for you.
Correct. Now, as you have now so far told us, the UGC rule which has come into effect talks about equity committee and equity squads who will go about checking whether there is discrimination on campus. When there is a discrimination, they have to take suitable action. This has come into effect to protect particularly members of the vulnerable communities like SC, ST, OBC. Does this also include religious minority? For instance, suppose a Muslim student, someone from Jammu and Kashmir, were to be studying. We know how they are also victimized in cities. So does this include them as well, or is this specifically for OBC, SC, ST community students?
See, the regulations mention religion when they say we want to eradicate discrimination and they define discrimination, religion is part of that, right? But I think this is predominantly caste based, including, when we see the composition of the equity committee, what they're saying is that there should be members of these castes and women and PWDs. So it is not mentioning religious, but I think in that sense it is obviously a wider committee. I think anybody who wants to go will be able to go there.
Okay, so I think now we've been able to suitably understand what the objection is, first of all, what this rule change was, and what the objection is, right? Now let's jump to the other part of the objection. You see, there are two aspects to the rule change. One is VBSA, the other is HECI, right? One is primarily a complaint which is coming from members of the general category saying that we will now be discriminated against. We have been accused so far of discriminating, now we will be discriminated against. The second part of the agitation is where universities and institutes, teachers feel that this rule change could be an attack on the federal structure, particularly related to the funding of these educational institutes. Would you like to explain why this fear has come about?
No, I'm sorry, but the VBSA and the HECI have nothing to do with these rules. They are completely two different things.
So which is why I wanted to ask you, what is this concern, this objection which is being raised about this being an attack on the federal structure? Is this a totally different issue?
Yeah, that is a completely different issue. That is an issue of, like you correctly said, that is the Higher Education Committee India Bill and the VBSA, which is going to be passed in Parliament, which is a completely different thing, right?
So now this clears it up. Aranya, you are saying that VBSA and HECI Bill has to do with the allegations and accusations of it attacking the federal structure because education is in the concurrent list and states will have less power, and all those concerns are separate. The equity rule, which has already been notified, which is already in effect, is a different matter.
Yes, it's
correct?
A completely different
Good.
matter. Yes.
So now we have clarity that these are two totally different things. The equity rule is already in existence, but the rule which Aranya will now explain, where allegation is that perhaps it will attack the federal structure and the funding of colleges may be in jeopardy, is not into effect right now. In fact, it is a bill which will have to be cleared by Parliament. Yes, Aranya, please tell us what this bill says and what is the objection. Yeah,
so in
Aranya.
essence, both the HECI and the VBSA are the same thing. They are just, it was the Higher Education Commission of India Bill, the draft which has been reworked, renamed, and it is now called the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishtan Bill. Now, as of after being introduced in the last Parliament session, this is currently with the Joint Parliamentary Committee because there was a lot of uproar about it. Now, you said why are people saying that it is an attack on the federal structure? So for that we have to understand the VBCA structure in itself. So what will happen here is that right now there are various kind of funding. There is the UGC, there is the All India Council for Technical Education, etc. This will all of those will be over, and there will be one apex commission at the center with three councils: a regulatory council, an accreditation council, and a standards council. But what the difference here is that what the VBCA has done is that it has removed grant disbursal from the regulator's mandate. So as of now, the UGC was doing both. Now the grant disbursal falls squarely with the Ministry of Education. And so what happens is that the ministry decides who gets what grant. Also, this is a very highly centralized body. It doesn't have representatives from other states. So there is this, when you say why is there a threat to federalism? This is the reason, because states feel like their voices will not be heard. And like we have seen in the case of Kerala recently, there was so much back and forth and controversy with the government not clearing funds uh, in Kerala, because Kerala government was not mandating with the PM Shri scheme. So that kind of, there are apprehensions that that could happen again, since it's going to be a very centralized agency.
For the benefit of our viewers, education is a subject in the concurrent list, right? Which is
Right.
not entirely the responsibility of the state and not also entirely the responsibility of the center, but of both.
Exactly. So the argument is that by putting in place a bill like this, you're taking away the powers and the rights of the state and centralizing everything.
Okay, I think this was a very, very critical episode to do, to first understand what are the things, just a quick recap for the benefit of our viewers, that we have learnt. The HECI and VBSA protest, which calls for a structural change in the manner in which grant dispersal will be done. That is something which has nothing to do with the equity protest, right? VBSA rules are yet to come into effect. In fact, the matter is in Parliament. It is ahead in front of a House panel. Once the Parliament clears it, only then will it come into effect. The objection to the VBSA bill is that it is an attack on the federal structure and it is going to centralize the process of amount dispersal to different institutes, and it will be in the control of the central government, with very little in control of the state governments or the various institutions that were doing it up until now. That is point number one. Point number two, which Aranya was able to tell us, was that this protest which is happening against the UGC equity rules is something which has already been notified and it has come into force. Now equity committees and all will be formed in various institutes which fall under the UGC ambit. And the objection there is largely by members of the general category who feel that so far the allegation was that we were discriminating. Now there could be a situation that because the changes of the rules are so sweeping, they allege, we will be discriminated against. So this is the protest and this is the whole story for you to be able to understand where we stand as of this moment. Aranya Shankar, thank you so much for getting us amazing amount of clarity on this subject, for us to be able to understand. Like a good teacher, you've been able to educate us all on what is happening in the education sector right now. Thank you very much for participating in this program. Thank you.